Seems that every day we unfortunately have to bring to the fore talk of another killing, another senseless crime committed by someone seeking to make a statement, revenge an act, or just for the macabre entertainment value of it to them. And often with that discussion comes the almost snap discussion of the insanity defense, leaving the general public to wonder many times how some people escape more serious punishment with such a claim, and how easy or difficult it is to tell the truth about someone who says they're insane. Let's turn to the legal side of matters for this and a whole lot more. Welcome back our legal analyst from the law firm of O'Brien and Ryan LLP in Philadelphia. Heather Hansen joins us. Heather, always a pleasure. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Ed.
All right, Heather, before we actually dig a little bit deeper into the insanity side of things, let's look at the specific trial we want to talk about here. This is the James Holm trial in Aurora, Colorado, the theater shooting. They're going to begin jury selection on January the 20th. Apparently, there's certain experts they won't call to the trial. People in Colorado are calling for blood on this one. What do you see at the beginning of this trial is going to be the key to watch as they get down to the jury selection?
Well, the jury selection is going to have to do with a number of things. We're looking at the death penalty issues, just like as you're seeing in Boston right now. You've got to get a death penalty qualified jury. So you need to get a jury that's willing to instill the death penalty. You also, if you're on the defense side, have to explore people's opinions on the insanity defense. As you stated, there's this perception that people are getting off on the insanity defense all over the place. And so if you're defending James Holmes, you want to try to make sure that you don't have a jury of people who are already coming in skeptical of such a defense.
Well, see, here's another thing, too. And what are you looking for, then, if you are the defense attorney, well, even for that matter, the prosecuting attorney, because you know that Holmes is going to claim insanity. What are you looking for out of the jurors? Because you only have a certain amount of time to question them, to get an idea where they're from in the voir dire. So are there keys and things that kind of tip you off to the yes or no you want them?
Jury selection is my favorite part of the process because it's a psychological analysis of each juror. You know, a lot of times you get jury consultants who will help you out, but what it comes down to a lot of times, Ed, is just instinct. You get a feel for somebody whether or not they're open to certain things. When you're talking death penalty, whether or not they're open or opposed to the death penalty, and that's a whole other system and way of approaching jury selection. When it comes to the insanity defense, a lot of times what you're looking for on both sides is someone with the intelligence to be able to listen to the medical experts, and you're going to hear a lot of medical experts in an insanity case, and weigh the experts against each other to decide which expert you're going to believe. So you're looking for someone who's open to listening, who's going to be attentive, who seems to have the intelligence to understand sometimes complicated medical testimony. Outside
of having that medical testimony, because certainly you'll have psychologists there, you'll have people who will have a chance to have examined the individual. What is it that you need to base, I guess, Let's look at the Holmes case then from the defense side here. Well, no, wait a minute. Let's look at this from the prosecutorial side of things here. You know that the doctors will come in and say that he's insane. But Heather, you and I both know there are people out there going, look, how many of these people get away with it and they're not really insane? They play act. How do you dig through that and decide that this guy or gal is really nuts?
Well, you've got to retain the best experts. So psychiatrists paid by both sides will have interviewed and met with Holmes on numerous occasions. And those psychiatrists will meet with the lawyers and come up with a way to present it to the jury to show, if you're the prosecution, that this is not insanity. Every state has a different insanity defense law. So in Colorado, it's a combination of two, and it gets complicated, but what it comes down to is whether or not there was a mental disease or defect, and that's where the experts come in, that caused the defendant to not know the difference between right or wrong. That part of it is really very fluffy for the juries. There's no definition of no, and there's no definition of right or wrong. So that is going to come down to testimony, and it's going to come down to the argument from the prosecutors and the defense attorneys to try to influence the jury to believe that, if you're the prosecutor, as you said, you'd want to believe that he did in fact know that this was wrong. To prove that, you'd have to say that he had planned his escape, that he knew that he was, with all of the writings in his notebook that we've seen and that we will see over the course of this trial. So all of that evidence will come in this very long trial.
I only got about 20 seconds left before we take a break, but is it fair to say that it's easier if somebody has a psychotic mental disorder than to try to prove that it happened out of depression?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. You want if you're trying to put forward this defense, you want some sort of diagnosed mental condition, whether it be bipolar, schizophrenia, something more severe than depression. Because as you said, juries are disinclined to go with this type of defense. So you need to give as much as you can possibly give on the defense side to push them that way.
All right, Heather Hansen, please stand by for a couple of moments. When we come back, we're going to turn to another trial, this time where PTSD is going to be at the core of it. It is the man who allegedly killed an American hero. That and so much more coming up on Midpoint. And welcome back to Midpoint. Also, let's welcome back legal analyst Heather Hansen joins us for our weekly look at what's cooking in the law. Heather, we talked a little bit about the insanity defense that is going on now, certainly with the trial in Aurora, but now we turn to a very different case involving a mental condition, and that's the case of former Marine Eddie Ray Ruth. He is the man who is charged with shooting Chris Kyle, the American Sniper, the movie that is out right now, and they are going to claim PTSD in all this. That has got to be a lot more. Well, perhaps, let me back up. Maybe that's easier, actually, to find in some cases. What's your opinion on versus insanity defenses, depression, and then with PTSD in there? Which one is, I guess, easier to discover and easier to prosecute?
I would think that it would be easier to defend a case with PTSD for the most part, Ed. This case is going to be unusual because if you were to put Eddie Ray Routh's name in a Twitter search today, you would see a lot of people who have a lot of terrible things to say about him. There are a lot of people who are against him due to the movie that came out this weekend, of course, and the fact that he killed a hero. But the truth is that PTSD had been diagnosed for him numerous times before he killed Kyle. And therefore, I think that the defense is going to have sort of a step ahead to create this defense of insanity based on those diagnoses.
You know, part of the argument does go here that many people will say, and I'm sure you've heard this, that we don't care. It doesn't make a difference. If they're insane, whatever it is, if they suffer from PTSD, it doesn't make any difference. They need to know the difference between right and wrong, and they need to be punished. That's a horrible statement to make when you meet some people who are suffering from true insanity or the PTSD and how it has drastically affected their mental ability to be able to think on a linear line.
And the thing is, you know, I wrote a piece on this on Newsmax.com about Eddie Ray Routh. I think that when we send our men and women over to see atrocities, which they do, and they come back heroes, we celebrate them, we should also be willing to help the wounded, take care of them, whether it be physically or mentally. When you have somebody like Eddie Ray Routh, who is going through hallucinations, given numerous drugs, has been dismissed from the VA on numerous occasions, it is very difficult to say that someone like that, I am not saying that he shouldn't be punished, but to initially he was up for the death penalty in this case. To say that someone like that should face the death penalty is a really difficult thing after everything that he gave to our country.
You think this one will go to trial, though?
Oh, I think it will definitely go to trial. The prosecutors just withdrew the death penalty in December, which I think was a very good decision on their part. There's going to be enough mitigating evidence about Eddie Ray's service. He served both in Iraq and in Haiti to put them in a position that the jury may actually have some sympathy for him, especially if the death penalty were on the line. I think it will go to trial, and it's going to be a really tight squeeze to try and get an insanity defense there.
All right, I got about a minute left here. Attorney General Eric Holder recently announced he is going to bar state and local law enforcement from seizing property of those convicted of a crime without warrants or charges. What's the impact of this?
The impact is huge, and we've talked about this civil asset forfeiture in the past. You know, it's a real problem where people who've been accused of crimes, had not been convicted, were having their property taken away and had to proactively go out and hire lawyers to get it back. This is stopping that in its tracks with regard to local and state officials. They can no longer do that. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I mean, the fact that this was happening was really, really causing awe in a lot of people because it's just surprising that people could do this. But it also is having an impact on our police forces who feel as though they have no resources, and this was a means for them to have some money to do some of the things they wanted to do, and now that's been cut off at the knees.
Another point where police officers feel they're under attack.
That's right, but you know, they have a lot to say and a lot of other issues, and I agree with them. On this particular point, I think that it's better to err on the side of not taking away people's property without due process than giving them the money that they need.
All of these cases and a whole lot more, we'll be watching them, and Heather Hansen will, of course, be here to comment on them as we watch the trials take on shape. Heather, thanks so much for being here. We'll talk to you again next week.
Take care, Ed. I'll
All
see
right,
you soon.
take care. One more break, and we're going to return with the only way to properly close a show on this day. For many, it is a day off. Many think it's a day just to relax. But for those of us who are aware of what history teaches us, it is a day where we need to look back and not just talk about, but maybe just hear the words from one man. That's coming up next, right here on Midpoint.